Hey y'all, and welcome to another Top 5 Cancelled Games video. After our Top 5 Cancelled Mario video skyrocketed past 1 million views and other videos on cancelled Zelda, Pokemon, PlayStation, and other games not far behind, we asked what you would like to see next. And you answered with Donkey Kong and Mega Man. So let's get started with the Top 5 Cancelled Donkey Kong games. Look forward to seeing Mega Man come out soon, and let us know in the comments below what other games you would like to see us discuss. Then you should subscribe so you don't miss out when those videos go live.
Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo gave birth to the return of Donkey Kong, introduced us to many brand new characters, and one of the best platforming games of the time. The game was so popular that 2 sequels quickly followed, some of which reported to other consoles such as the Game Boy Advance, and even a cancelled sequel for Nintendo's Virtual Boy, which is a bonus cancelled game that you probably didn't know about. We received the original Donkey Kong Country in 1994, the sequel, Diddy Kong's Quest, in 1995, and Part 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, in 1996. Let's not forget about the multiple Donkey Kong Land games that released on Game Boy the same years. It would only make sense for Rare and Nintendo to want to continue with another. Donkey Kong Country 4 was believed by many to release in 1997. However, this marked the second year that Nintendo's new console, the Nintendo 64, was available. Now, no official footage or screenshots of Donkey Kong Country 4 exist, but some rumors and interviews suggest that it was moved from the Super Nintendo and reworked into what would eventually become Donkey Kong 64. Within the game's story, this is true, as Donkey Kong 64 picks up after Donkey Kong Country 3 ends. It is thought that the original game would have made use of the Super FX chip, just like Star Fox and Super Mario RPG did for better visuals. Instead of using the much more expensive FX chips, the project was soon moved to the N64. This is very similar to what happened with Mother 3, which also began as a Super Nintendo game before moving to the N64 disk drive, and finally scaled down for the Game Boy Advance, which you can learn all about in our Top 5 Cancelled Nintendo Games video. Since Rare now had a lot more processing power than what was allowed on the Super Nintendo and the FX chip, they and Nintendo decided to take full advantage of the hardware and make the game 3D.
Diddy Kong Racing Adventure. Diddy Kong Racing Adventure would have been a GameCube sequel to the Nintendo 64 original, though not to be confused with Donkey Kong Racing, a separate cancelled game which was shown off during Space World 2001 for the GameCube. In fact, Diddy Kong Racing Adventure wasn't even pitched to Nintendo until 2004. 3 years after Donkey Kong Racing was cancelled, although it is likely that the project was inspired by it. Sadly, the project never made it past the demo phase, as the pitch was rejected by Nintendo. Curiously enough, the demo was running off of Xbox hardware. Instead of being developed by Rare, who had previously been bought by Xbox, the game was being developed by Climax Group. Gameplay would have been similar to the previous Nintendo 64 title, but would make full use of the extra processing power offered by the Nintendo GameCube. The player would be able to travel across Kong Island and visit several different villages, in what is considered to be open world-ish style gameplay. The island itself would have many different hidden areas, characters, and secrets to discover. As seen in the demo, you could ride on rhinos, as well as planes, quad bikes, jet skis, and hovercrafts. You would have been able to change vehicles mid-race and collect items to customize your vehicles. Similar to Mario Kart, different offensive and defensive abilities and attacks could be made. The original pitch had 16 different villages, each with 3 different courses, which also featured a mode to race them in reverse, similar to the Mario Kart series. Although the game or demo was never announced to the public, documents and gameplay footage finally surfaced in November of 2016.
Donkey Kong 64 2. Donkey Kong 64 2, or just Donkey Kong, didn't have an official title, but it was set to be the sequel of Donkey Kong 64 except for the GameCube. You probably already guessed it. Here we are with another victim of Microsoft's purchase of Rare. Sadly, no footage of gameplay exists, but we do know that the game was supposed to have music composed by Grant Kirkhope, Dave Wise, and Robin Vinland, all 3 of which who had worked with Rare in the past on games in the Donkey Kong series, 2 of which even returned for the Rare-inspired ukulele. All that we know about the game is that it was supposed to follow the gameplay style of Donkey Kong 64 and be a direct sequel. It would have brought brand new gameplay mechanics to the series and taken full advantage of the GameCube hardware. similar to how Super Mario Sunshine advanced from the Super Mario 64. Some rumors suggest it was supposed to include multiplayer, like its predecessor, but it is unclear if it would have been a full co-op mode where friends could come along on your adventure, or if it would have been more of a simple versus mode, like the original.
Donkey Kong Coconut Crackers. As with a lot of the games on this list, this game was developed by Rare under their partnership with Nintendo, but was cancelled due to Microsoft buying them in 2002, which caused Rare to lose the rights to work on the Donkey Kong series. Coconut Crackers would have been a fun multiplayer isometric puzzle game for the Game Boy Advance. It had different colored coconuts falling from the sky, cracking on the ground and coloring in the square or the tile, which is where the game title comes from. You would have the ability to switch between top-down 2D graphics and the 3D isometric perspective. The gameplay would be similar to Tetris or Dr. Mario or other color-connecting puzzle games. After the cancellation, Rare didn't want all the time spent working on the game to be for nothing, so they reworked it into It's Mr. Pants, with Donkey Kong switched for Mr. Pants, a mascot who used to be featured on Rare's official website. The 3D isometric look was scrapped from the final game because a developer claimed it was due to consistency issues when swapping between the two views, due to it just being awkward seeing where puzzle pieces near the back of the board were, and finally because it just didn't look as nice as they had hoped. The multiplayer, which supported up to 4 players via link cables, was also scrapped, leaving It's Mr. Pants to be a single-player only game. According to a developer at Rare who credits himself with creating 2/3 of the game's levels described, It's Mr. Pants is just a solid puzzle game, and stated, "We knew that it wasn't a big wow game, but the playability was there." This makes me curious. Why work on a game that you know and believe is going to be lackluster or mediocre? Maybe they originally believed the Donkey Kong name would be enough to boost sales. I wonder why they didn't just create a new Donkey Kong adventure or platforming game that they actually believed in. It's Mr. Pants was finally released in 2005 for the Game Boy Advance and for mobile phones in 2005 and 2006.
Honorable mention, Donkey Kong Racing. We briefly mentioned it earlier during the cancelled Diddy Kong Racing adventure. I didn't feel like we needed to actually put this game on the list as it has been covered so many times before and is one of the most well-known cancelled Donkey Kong games. Originally announced at E3 2001 and later shown off at Space World of the same year, it was to be a sequel of sorts to Diddy Kong Racing for the Nintendo 64, but was cancelled due to Microsoft's purchase of Rare. The game itself was later converted to Saberman Stampede for the Xbox, moved to the Xbox 360, and before finally being cancelled in 2006.
Number 1, Diddy Kong Pilot. Like a couple of other games on this list, Diddy Kong Pilot was meant to be a sequel of sorts for Diddy Kong Racing. You could compare this game to the Nintendo 64's Diddy Kong Racing in the same way you could compare the handheld Donkey Kong Land series to its home console counterpart, Donkey Kong Country. Diddy Kong Pilot was another one of Rare's late projects that was ultimately cancelled because of their partnership with Microsoft. However, not everything was lost. The game was reworked into Banjo Pilot and released in January of 2005 for the Game Boy Advance. But in November of 2011, a collector who purchased a prototype cartridge had what seemed like a half-complete working beta version, which was leaked online and is now playable. With that said, no one is completely sure how far along this version of the beta is. The final game could have included more levels, items, characters, story plot, and who knows what else. Diddy Kong Pilot was first shown off at Space World 2001 and featured both Donkey Kong and Mario characters. This would have actually been the first time a Mario character was featured prominently in a Donkey Kong Country spin-off series. An early version of the game featured Diddy Kong, Princess Peach, Mario, Cranky Kong, King K. Rool, Donkey Kong, Yoshi, sitting on Lakitu's cloud, Wario piloting a red biplane similar to the Bulldog, Bowser, Dixie Kong, Funky Kong, and let's not forget about Toad. If all of those weren't enough, a later version added Crunch, Dixie Kong, King K. Rool, Candy Kong, Cranky Kong, and a character tentatively called Redneck Kong. The gameplay would have used a lot of mechanics that were already found in the Mario Kart series and Diddy Kong Racing, with boosts and other obvious items being shown off. It also featured a tilt sensor and included several different game modes: racing, story, dogfight, battle, and clock race. Interestingly enough, while the game's original demo does look fun, when shown to Miyamoto, the creator of Donkey Kong, it was heavily criticized. Here's a quote from one of his major concerns: "There's no point in flying up and down on flat levels." It seems Rare took this criticism and improved the levels for the final release of Banjo Pilot, as the levels do look a bit more enjoyable with more vertical depth. All of this makes me wonder, how does Nintendo feel about this? With all of these Rare games that could have prominently featured Nintendo characters going to the Game Boy Advance, DS, or GameCube just being reskinned and published by their competition, Xbox. Well, similar to other games on this list, though the property is owned by Microsoft, the games ended up being published on Nintendo's console. This was really only for the handheld games, which were already in production, as Microsoft wasn't competing in the handheld market, so they had no concerns publishing their games on the console. So for a short period of time, Banjo-Kazooie and other Rare games would be published on the Game Boy Advance and the Nintendo DS. However, the home console games were strictly only published on Xbox hardware. And I think this is the case all the way up until Minecraft, when a similar situation happened when Microsoft purchased Mojang Studios, the creators of Minecraft, who already had versions in the work for the PlayStation Vita, Nintendo 3DS, Wii U, and now even the Switch. If you can think of any other first-party Xbox or PlayStation games that were also published on Nintendo's consoles, please put them in the comments below. And if we use it in a new video, we'll give you a shout out for bringing it to our attention. Also, please let us know what you think of these and the other games featured on this list.